Everyone, it was last Friday night. I was speaking to my Sabbath group. We were meeting together, getting ready to go to YouTube Live. We meet every single Friday night in our Discord group. And we were talking about, I guess, politics. We were getting political, talking about Trump, talking about Biden. And I made the comment that it felt like we were just watching this script unfold, like we were watching a movie. And the context, of course, was talking about the debates and how bad Biden did, and how before the debate, the Democrats were going out there on CNN and stuff and saying, if you think there's something wrong with Biden, you're the crazy one. They were gaslighting everybody. And then right afterwards, they just turned on him. They threw him under the bus. And, we're watching this whole thing unfold. We had, of course, no clue that Saturday was going to happen. Now, we've been waiting for this event, this assassination attempt or assassination, the quote unquote head wound, for a good, 8 years now, probably 2016 back to 2015 when we first started seeing Trump make the rounds and a lot of talk was there. And then boom, it happened over the weekend. I was all gearing up to give a talk on the Anunnaki tonight, and I called up my friends here, everybody here. We have before us John Q, Dovin Branch, also goes by Chuck, Graham, and Matthew. They are all members of the Tuck community on Discord. I love every single one of them. I've met John Q in person. Graham has had a dinner. He's at my house, and I'm sorry for that beeping going off over here. I can't stop it. Okay, so we're going to be talking about this tonight. And before we do, of course, I went live and I just realized I didn't bring up the paper I've been working on. I do have under this YouTube video, for everyone that is interested, I've been working on a Trump assassination attempt paper called The Shot Heard Around the World. And I'm looking at it from two angles. And this is what I kind of want to talk about tonight. Is this a hoax or is this an inside job? Now, depending on how you look at the world stage, you're going to look at it from two different potential angles. And I think that for the individuals that will state that everything is a hoax, and I have a lot of papers that I've written, a lot of hoax pieces that I've covered, everything from the Titanic to, there's some things actually I don't want to say right now that I've covered, but a great number of things that I've covered on different potential hoaxes. And it's an unthinkable thought for the hoax crowd to see this as legitimate, just as much as the inside job or the Anon crowd is going to have a hard time seeing this as a hoax, because if it's a hoax, it means Trump is not the person they hope he is. And of course, if the hoax crowd, if there is legitimacy to this and there was actually a shot fired that grazed his ear, then they have problems, because now you see people who actually want to take him out. And we're looking at the potential, the intervention of Yah in real time in history, actually preserving a person's life. Now, you guys, everybody out there has seen this video footage 100 times already. All right. So my apologies. Well, I'm not apologizing, actually, but we're going to play this again for historical purposes, because we're going to be discussing this tonight. So I want to play the footage. It's about 2 minutes, as you guys know, of the assassination attempt. And then I'll bring you guys all on and we'll start talking about it. So here we go.
Old, that chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Moving to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready.
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Moving to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down.
Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
Good to move.
We're clear.
We're clear.
Move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my
my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
All right. Now, whether or not that was a hoax that we saw on a stage, which it was ironically on a stage, or if it was a legitimate bullet that came after President Trump, I think everybody listening and watching can agree that this is going to go down as one of the most momentous moments on the world stage in history. And that's why we're discussing this right now. So welcome, everybody. Let's see if I can bring this back up. Okay, good. All right, so I have with me John Q. He is no stranger here. I've had him on a few times. This is the first time I've ever had on Dove Branch, or Chuck as he goes, as he's known, Graham and Matthew. So welcome, everybody. What I want to do is we're going to go across and just take 30 seconds, a minute, and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, starting with you, John Q.
Hey, yeah, Noel, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you and these fine gentlemen. John Q. Adams. I sort of woke up from the 2020 election. That's kind of was my precipice, my awakening. Although I was starting to slur or stir out of my slumber before then during COVID. I am a United States Marine Corps combat veteran, 2 tours in Iraq. Proud father of 2 and husband to a loving wife.
All right, Chuck.
All right. Yeah, my name's Chuck. I kind of came to the truth of things back in probably 2012, 2013. I've been doing this for almost 11 years now. I am been married for 19 years and have 4 children. And I served for 8 years in the United States Army in multiple different MOSs. I did advanced SEER training through them, which search, evade, and rescue type stuff. I did a combat tour in Iraq as well, and I did 2 different tours to both Kuwait, where we did missions into Syria and Iraq, and been using firearms since I was old enough to hold them, basically. So I got a lot of experience with weaponry. After that, I did 5 years in the Air Force, trained as a intel analyst, and finished out as a cyber systems administrator. So I did a lot of different things with the military and training, and now I work just as a contractor for DoD. But yeah.
Okay, good. All right, Graham. Welcome.
So yes, I've been in the truth movement since I guess maybe around 2008, 9, somewhere in there, and got on flat Earth around 2016, 15, 16. Been in the Tuck group here now for what, 3 years, 4 years, a while.
Something like that.
And of course,
I lose track. You guys all just showed up in my life.
Can you hear me? We still good?
I can hear you just fine.
So in the context of Trump, I voted for him in 2016. I followed a lot of the Q stuff, and when he did not win the 2020 election, I kind of fell away and was studying other things and didn't really follow politics. I actually purposely didn't vote in 2020 because I had the attitude that it was all rigged and they were all selected, which I do feel that it's always pretty much been that way, or at least as long as I've been alive. And but I do see that there's something different happening here. And when we started looking into the Millennial Kingdom aspect of it. I saw how Q kind of ties in really with a lot of the belief system I have through Scripture, and I see that coming together, not a compartmentalized thing. But anyway, so I've been, following the Q. I wouldn't really consider myself an Anon because I'm not really a researcher, but I listen to a lot of people who do research and inform my opinions, and I'm excited to talk about it tonight. I'm a landscaper. I live in Georgia. I'm a father of 6 daughters. In my second marriage, half were from the first marriage, but yeah, that's me. I'm Graham.
All right, and Matthew, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here. So my name is Matthew. You might know me as Cyber Sailor on Discord. I've been around in the Q circles for quite some time. I have first started my truth seeking with the Flat Earth, and then I've known about Q about the same time, but I just kind of held it off for quite some time. When I jumped into that game, it was a little bit tougher because you were getting into the 4chan and the 8chan. That was before it became easier to access Q alerts as the way I go now. But that would have been around December 10th of 2018. When I came on, he was doing the Ask Me Anything. And I asked him, how are the wife and kids? Specifically referring to JFK Jr. So if you're not aware of that, there's quite a few people that are in witness protection and they're coming out. So of all the people here, as far as my expertise goes, it's more familiarity with the Q post, putting together different pieces and different theories, which doesn't have so much of a expertise background to like back up anything, but it's the fun kind of wild card. So that's me.
Now, man, I'm sorry for this beeping that's going off. I can't silence my Discord. So anybody on Discord right now, maybe you guys tone it down a little bit. So, all right, I just want to let everyone know out there that I am myself am not an Anon. I'm not associated with Q. I don't follow Q post, QAnon or anything like that. How many of you would say you are? Graham, you said you're maybe not, but you kind of lean that way. Matthew, you identified yourself as an Anon. John Q, would you say you're an Anon? I think that's safe to say, but I want to make sure.
I mean, I don't consider myself, for sure. I don't consider myself an OG Anon because I didn't even know about the Q drops until like after the November 25th, 2020, 4th or whatever that day was. I try to remain anonymous, so in that sense, I consider myself an Anon, and I have dove into the drops and I've researched them, and I've formed my own conclusions, and so yeah, I guess I could say in that sense I'm an Anon, but I'm definitely not an OG Anon.
Okay, Dev Ranch, Chuck, what would you say? Yes, no?
I have literally no association with it whatsoever, other than listening to the few times you've had John on. So
okay, good, thank you. All right, so I just want to show everybody really quickly, and you guys saw the footage. This is what I'm writing right now. This is linked underneath. You guys can check it out. I'm working on this all week, so I think I'm like 20 pages in. It'll probably be like a typical 40-50 page report for me by the time I'm done. But the thing that I really wanted to focus on first was looking at the head wound and the wound of the ear, the bullet, the blood, and trying to figure out when does the blood appear? Can we see a wound on the ear? These kind of questions, right? Do we see a bullet? Is the bullet faked? Looking at the order, the precision of the pop, pop, pop with the flinching and everything like that. It's an amazing clockwork precision. So before we go into all of this, I want to just throw this out to you guys. Looking at that footage and the events around the day, but it's mostly the footage, and then the rest we kind of have to go with eyewitness testimony, speculation in the crowd, things that they saw or didn't see, that kind of stuff, different various angles. What would you guys, looking at this, the events over the last few days, ascertain as you could take this as a fact, like something that you were like, okay, I think this is true?
Yeah, I'll start. So my opinion, I can say that the sounds that occurred at 6:11 p.m. Eastern I instantly knew what they were. I knew that they were a 5.56 or round.
It's either, 223 or 556.
Yeah, 223 or 566. I've heard that. I know that sound. Like instantly, I can recognize that. I can recognize instantly an AK-47. I can recognize instantly, a 50 cal Barrett. There's so many things that I can instantly recognize. I knew it coming through the TV screen. I knew what that was.
Yeah, I can confirm. Like that's the very first thing, because I was sitting on my couch, basically had some family over for the weekend. Family came in from out of town, and we were all hanging around, and somebody was just like, "Hey, turn on the news. Trump just got shot at." Okay, so we turned it on, and as soon as they played the footage the first time, I'm like that. Whoever's shooting is shooting a semi-automatic 223 or 556. Like it's you've heard it so many times if you've shot those weapons. Like, and being in the military, both John and I have shot those weapons thousands of times. Like even range days. I mean, you've sprayed tons of those bullets. It's an instinctive sound. You know what it sounds like. So
I agree. I not thousands, but I've shot hundreds. I have a AR-15. I've shot 223 and 556, and I recognized it too. You can also hear when the bullet is fired and when it hits, when the impact occurs. It's like a pop pow, and then you hear the first group of 5 or so, and then you hear a little bit of a pause, and then the other group of return fire where they were shooting back at the shooter. But yeah, that was pretty distinctive.
So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here. What I heard initially was the first 3 shots, which were consistent with a shot grouping. Then I heard a slight pause for about a second and a half. There were 2 successive shots immediately after that, and then it was about 15 seconds had passed, and then there was another shot. So that's what I heard. So I don't know. There's people that say there was as many as 7 shots fired. But you can hear kind of from the audio, especially if you're wearing headphones while you're watching it, you can kind of hear that those shots come from different angles. So they were not all coming from the same trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. And that's, I don't know if y'all want to get into this yet, but I not a hoax, but inside job is what I'm leaning toward currently. It seems very JFK assassination had that kind of feel to it. And, they instantly ID the shooter, and he didn't have an ID on him, but they were able to do a DNA test like really quickly and confirm it. And then, it's supposed to keep us from questioning further. And if you listen to what they're talking about now concerning the so-called shooter, it's all psychoanalysis, who were his friends, what did he do? But the question that no one seems to be asking is, who did he work for? Who hired him to shoot President Trump? Those are the real issues. But the whole lone gunman is awfully familiar. And they had him in the sights, the Secret Service for like 7 minutes, watched him crawl into place. It was, to me, in my opinion, as if they were instructed to wait and shoot him after he shot Trump so they could kill him, and he wouldn't be around to answer any questions. But yeah, there's a lot of suspicion about was there another shooter, maybe on the water tower. I heard today there's another metal building is 488 yards away, and they were able to, through the ballistics testing, determine that some of the rounds that came from 488 yards away, not the 150 or so that was the official story. So I think there's more to come out, and I think that there's going to be a lot for some time to come. But we also live in a time, this is the difference between now and JFK, was everybody had their cell phones out, and the whole thing was live and recorded from all different angles. And I think that the truth, whatever the truth is going to come out a lot faster.
Yeah, this was definitely a live activity. Now, let's talk about the hoax aspect a little bit. And there are those out there I have noticed so far. When we started looking into this, in our Discord community. I invited a lot of people. We've had an incredible conversation the last 3 or 4 days. I've really enjoyed it. It's kind of been like kind of a bromance between us and others who've been in there. And there are some who are just coming at this with mockery. If you believe any of this, your soul's been sucked out, you're blinded, these kind of things. And I will say to everyone out there is that I've always been a big believer. I put a lot of emphasis into showing things are hoaxes, and you've got to be able to show it. Right. I have a paper on Sandy Hook, on the Boston bombing, these kind of things where I could show, okay, this video footage is fake. This photo is fake. And here's why. And so one of the immediate things you guys talked about, the rounds that went off, which is really interesting because you're picking up on things that, I'm not a gun expert. I've said that multiple times. I said that to you guys. But the things that I wanted to focus on immediately, if this is a hoax or not. So I kind of went into this coolly, like, there was some people jumped in the conversation, like, come on, guys, just say this is a hoax and just be done with it. We don't want to talk about this. It's a hoax. I'm like, no, I think it was you, John Q. You said, give it to the, was it the 72-hour rule or something like that?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, let's let the facts come in first. Let's just look at this, or what they say are the facts, right? Let's let the information, including the misinformation, all the information, the misdirection, everything all come in, and let's pick it apart and look at it. And the first thing I wanted to look at was the blood, right? So we have a claim that a bullet ripped by this way. He turned his head at the last possible minute, ripped his ear, and that there was blood. So the immediate thing that came out. Let me just scroll down on my paper here. Show these photos. Was this idea of that there was like a blood packet that was put in. Now, if you notice this picture, what's interesting is that they show a whole ear with no wound on it, right? Now, I think a lot of us, I think John Q, you had that thought. A lot of us have this thought like, okay, what if they, this is the WWE guy. What if they just, they took a blood packet, little catsup, whatever, little bottle catsup and poured it there. Well, the problem is I was asking you, John, I wanted to see an actual wound. And let's see if I could find it here, the photo. It's here somewhere. Maybe I have to scroll up. No, I have to go down. And when you actually zoom in, you could see right there, you could actually see that there is a wound on his ear. So I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. So now we need to make a case. Can you find that there was a wound before or after he went down, right? At what point was his ear clipped? Because people are coming and say, well, they clipped his ear. But then they'll say, well, the blood is fake. Well, so you can't have it both ways. Either the blood is fake or the blood is real. Either the wound is fake or the wound is real, right? And what I found amazing, it took me a long time. I know Dove and Branch, we were both looking at it together, was trying to figure out, because it's a clockwork precision, nanoseconds, right? It goes boom, boom, boom. The first hit, we see him flinch up. I was playing this on like quarter speed. I was going back over and over and over again. As soon as the first bullet hits, you see him flinch up. And then by the time the second bullet hits, his hand has gone up to his ear. And by the time the third bullet hits, or you hear it just pop, 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 he's looking at his hand. And I wanted to know, was there blood on his hand? You can't necessarily see it in the low resolution video, but you can on these photos right here. And then we were matching up and go, there it is. In the video as well, you can see the blood. So the question is, at what point, if it's a blood packet, what point did he pop that open? Surely not here. I mean, did it happen in these series of photos? They happen so quick, right? So there's blood on his hand. He drops down. And then people are asking the question, well, why isn't there blood on his shirt, right? Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, whether it's fake blood or real blood, no blood got on his shirt, right? It doesn't matter either way. Fake or real, nothing got on his shirt. And I would say the reason being is did anybody
see it in the actual, like, I didn't see it until this time you just played it. I don't know how I haven't seen it, but I've probably watched this video 150 times over the past 3 days. But in the video, this time I saw it in one very short nanosecond. You see he's holding something in his hand that looks to be like maybe a white rag that's covered in red. Like, in just one very brief clip, it looks like he's holding something in his hand that's covered in blood. And it was in the video clip this time. And I'm like, how have I not seen that before?
You can see right here. I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but you could see right here when they lift him back up. So the reason the blood did, again, and I want to stress to everyone out there, whether this is fake blood or real blood, it doesn't make a difference. We can all agree that it didn't get on his shirt. All right. The reason being is because he went down and you could see the blood trailing down his cheeks towards his mouth right here. Right. So that's what created, kind of looked like a streak, like the bullet streaked him or whatever, but the blood's dripping down. And when they lift him up, you could see they have some sort of rag here. They were already holding up to his ear and
I think it's
catching
a Secret Service handkerchief, I believe.
Is that what it was?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and Chuck, what I think what you're referencing is when he grabs his ear and then he brings his hand back, he looks at his hand and then as he kind of wipes it but he sees that's when he sees the blood, and maybe there's a little chunk of flesh that had also torn off when he grabbed his ear. I don't know, but I think that's what you're referring to.
It was a scene where they were getting ready.
Yeah, I might have to look it up.
Oh, getting ready to move. Then that would have been the
okay.
Well, yeah. And that's the next thing that I think needs to be discussed is from a trauma perspective, right? I've seen guys that have gotten hit bullet wounds before. Like it's not an immediate reaction, right? There's no, people, and that the whole scene is consistent with a live shooting because it takes time for you to register what's happening. Like people, again, John is the one that initially said this, but I agree wholeheartedly with the statement. It's only in the movies that you see people start screaming and running immediately. Your brain takes a second and a half minimum to process incoming information when you're in this situation because you're going to have one of three responses. You're going to have a fight, flight, or freeze reflex. And it's just natural. You can't fight it. Even with massive amounts of training. I've seen guys that I've trained with for like hundreds of hours that still have a freeze response. They can't fight it. And you're trained to snap these people out of that so that they come back into the picture and react. Trump, when he gets hit with that bullet, his immediate reaction is to drop. Like he gets hit, he realizes, oh, this is real, and he drops. And what struck me as like, I kind of had a lump in my throat watching it because I'm like, wow. My very first thought was, wow, this is real. Like this isn't something you can fake because he drops. And the immediate, like a second and a half later, he's got two Secret Service agents on top of him. Like after it happens, after he hits the deck, you see one guy come in from the left and one guy come in from the right to cover his body. And there's three more that come out of the sidelines and surround him. The only one of those that I particularly think is an actual Secret Service agent and not a DHS guy is the very last guy to enter the stage. And it's just because of the way he behaves and the way he's scanning. He immediately, his hand goes to his sidearm. None of the others have done that, which indicates that it's against policy. Every single one of them should have had a hand on their firearm to be looking and scanning for other people that were actively engaging. And he hits the ground, and within probably 10 seconds of them hitting him, the guy says, "Are you ready to move?" And he says nothing. He's on the ground and he's there, and they're like, "We got to move. We're clear." 10 seconds later, they finally get him onto his feet. And the first thing he says is, "I've got to find my shoes."
Yeah, that is so real. People, I've seen it over and over again in combat situations, what have you. People they'll be hit. They will be thinking of the most weird, random thing. Like I need my shoes. Exactly. Like that kind of thing.
And he could have been wearing his shoes.
Yeah.
He could have had his shoes on his feet and just said, "I got to have my shoes." And they're like, "Dude, you're wearing shoes." Like,
I actually was really impressed with that. I thought that was one of the great human aspects of this, where he's up on stage concerned. I just got to get my shoes. I got to get my shoes. There's a couple of things I want to talk about shock real quick, but I do want to go back on this one point because it doesn't matter what you say. There's going to be certain individuals say, no, he's acting. He's a wrestling guy. It was a WWE. I never watched that. So, but I'm very familiar with what people are talking about. I've seen the clips and stuff. It's all like, they get down, his wrestling buddies get him down there and clip his ear. And, it's like, that kind of thing. And it's all a performance. The thing is that what I can't get past, even, I even ask questions. What if this is like they fake the bullet? It's like some sort of special effect or something like that. What I can't get past is the perfect nanosecond down to the precision, clockwork precision of the boom, 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 and you just play that in slow motion, and it is perfect, right on par. There's no way any of that could be faked, in my opinion. That is my opinion. Everybody is free to their own opinion, and of course, those of you out there listening, if you obviously you are free to not believe anything in the official narrative.
Well, John can probably back me up on this, and a blank sounds different.
Yes, very different.
It doesn't have the same echo. It doesn't have the same reverberation. And as Graham said, you can clearly hear in the video the bullets making impact with things. Like it's not the same sounds. So if it was hoaxed and there was supposed to be a hoax, there were real bullets there that maybe they didn't anticipate. So, I mean, there is that aspect to it. There's the fact that maybe the guy on the roof was shooting blanks and they have a different sound. Maybe that's the second 2 shots that we hear fired. And then that third later shot is then taking them out. But the first 3 shots are consistent with what I've always heard with actual live rounds being fired. And maybe that was the 440-yard shots.
How would you guys respond to the 2 big rebuttals that I've seen of there's not enough blood, and that a bullet, the bullet should have ripped off his ear?
Not a 5.56. That part of it I can attest to. A 5.56 does not have enough percussive impact to rip an ear off. It's not intended for that. It's a small caliber round that's intended to enter the body and not exit it. So it's meant to have enough penetrating force to bounce around inside of you and essentially scramble your internal organs. That's what it's intended to do. I'm sorry, it sounds graphic, but it's what it's meant to do. It's not supposed to have an exit wound.
Okay, fair enough. And then what about the blood? Would you guys, I don't know if anybody is a medical expert here, but we obviously get a lot of opinions from individuals who will, give their opinion on how much blood there should be. It grazed, really took a little chunk off the top of his right ear. How much blood should have been there, in your guys' opinion? Do you think it describes it well, what we saw?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that. I think the other evidence suggests that it's real. I don't think we can go by the amount of blood and say, the amount of blood is not enough, so it overrules all the other evidence. It's ear cartilage. I don't know how much blood should be going through that part. Again, he was down with his face down, so the blood was flowing down inside of his face, as you can see. The Secret Service then was wiping him off as they got him up. So I don't think we can. I can't conclusively say if it's enough blood or not, but.
Well, I've got a very minimal amount of experience with this. I am not a medic, never did medic training. I've been around medics and talked to them a lot, but my experience that I've come from, weirdly enough, is I've done a lot of tattoos and piercings in my life. And I can tell you that it's so subjective when it comes to people. I've had guys who I've pierced their ear cartilage and they bleed like a stuck pig. And I've had guys that I've pierced their ears and they don't bleed at all. It's so subjective person to person as to the build of the capillaries in the ears, how much cartilage versus, and he's an older guy. So some older guys don't bleed as much as younger guys do. Some older guys bleed much more than other people do. You don't know if maybe they had some type of a wound compressing gauze that they sprayed on his ear while he was down there. You just don't know, because that's a thing. Packing gauze has an anticoagulant agent that they could have slapped on his ear real quick to stop any profuse bleeding. That's a thing. So we don't get to see enough of what happened in that huddle to make a conclusive guess as to what happened there.
I wanted to point out, and I don't know if you drew this illustration, John, but this was a meme that is obviously going around and being shared, and it says you'd think a bullet from an AR-15 rifle would have caused a much bigger injury. And did you draw that in the little red square box, John?
I did. Yeah, I'm like, come on, guys. That the bullet is just that little tip. The rest of it's the cartridge that is going to get ejected. That's got all the gunpowder in it. That's going to eject the little tiny little bullet, the tiny little round out the end of your barrel. Yeah.
The big part is what makes it go so far. Essentially, the gunpowder part.
for those that know ballistics, a 5.56 is essentially the same thing as a 22 LR. The only difference in the caliber is the caliber and the gunpowder behind it, and that nose cone that you see versus a rounded cone is just for speed and distance and efficiency of travel. Like there's no weight difference in a 5.56 and a 22 LR. It's essentially the same round.
Matthew, you've been quiet over there. Do you have any thoughts on what we've been talking about? I'd like to have your insight.
Yeah, when it comes to first thoughts, like I said, a little bit of the wild card. I've been in the Q circles for a long time. So to me, like, I take whatever they say at the very end when everything comes to light, that every single post will be true in some interpretation. And so then we don't understand that correctly until the end. Coming from that angle, the first thing I thought is on the side of, I think this is a hoax, excellently executed. I think the white hats are in control. I think there might have been some gunfire that was completely legit from the opposite black hats, not, hence the death and the injuries of the bystander crowd. But I would have to side with it being more of an orchestrated event. The reason I say it is a bunch of the things that you bring up, but as far as the amount of detail with looking at, the size of the MON, all the things that you guys are bringing up, ballistics and whatnot, which is well beyond my expertise. I have no experience in that whatsoever. There's enough to me to sway that it is the most perfectly executed hoax, if you will.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I mean, I'm curious because I'm not an Anon. I don't follow that. So from an Anon perspective, you're saying it's a hoax, white hat against the black hat, I think you called it. So maybe you could break that down for us. What do you see going on in this situation?
When it comes down to Anons, we are going to be evenly split across the board completely on this issue. Absolutely. There's no Q post with a timestamp based on any of the events that have actually happened. The only thing it alludes to is like shot heard around the world. Fight, whether or not it's with the comma or not. So you take different things that he was saying, different events that happened around there, and you can put different pieces together. I apologize, didn't have time to put anything together myself. But looking at all of the resources that we shared within the Discord channel, particularly in the letter Q channel, give enough of that vibe to recognize that it certainly is possible that it was well executed. And I'll leave that at that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I whatever you want to leave at that is fine. But I mean, I'm curious, and maybe even some of the viewers out there would, because you have a lot of people that are just saying that this is totally a hoax, and they're going to say that, and QAnon or the Anons or Q, however you want to say that, is all part of a psyop as well. So if you have Anons out there saying that this is a perfectly executed hoax, I'm assuming you're saying that Trump is hoaxing. Is he hoaxing the left? Like who's he hoaxing?
Yes, that is what I'm insinuating. I'm insinuating that they had this planned. They needed to have it set up in such a way that there would be no firm result for a long period of time. Now, granted, that's exactly what the black hats, the cabal, deep state, whatever have you, they would want it to take a little bit of time before they can get their stories straight. If it was actually them that was doing it, they would need that time. But for us, there are certain events in place that you can't talk about in advance. You can't show them what's going to happen. And there is no information, nothing alluding to this actually happening, like said, with like timestamps. However, there's a lot of stuff that is related to the events that happen afterwards, like the fight, and the recognition of the shot heard around the world. So when you have those posts that are alluding to what happened and nothing indicating when it was going to happen, it's one of those things, because we're not the only ones that are looking at the Q boards. Everyone worth their salt in the deep state and like who has been on shaky ground, they can look at this stuff too. It's public information. So you have to have the PSYOP built in a way that if you have important stuff that's going to happen, you're not going to tell anyone. And that's just how I see it. And there's nothing being said that this is going to happen at this time, nothing alluding to it. I didn't see enough of that in the Q post to indicate such things, but there's more stuff coming to light afterwards, but it's not related to when it was going to happen. And that's where I see the biggest proof of this.
Okay, good. And I'm hoping you could continue chiming in with your thoughts as we go around through this. And, you know, what I would love to hear from all of you at the end, not right now, is, you know, what you think, whatever our conclusions are, and everyone here might have different conclusions, what you think the implications of that are, right? Like, what is the ultimate meaning of that? And Matthew, that would be a great point to bring up. I mean, if Trump is hoaxing, I assume he's hoaxing the Biden administration. It sounds like a couple frat boys kind of, you know, hoaxing each other back and forth, you know, stealing the mascot or something. But, you know, what does that all mean? What does that add up to? Okay, guys. So
I want to take it from here. When we consider JFK Jr., you're like, okay, so when he was supposedly going to die, they set up on his airplane. They put a bomb on his airplane, proximity bomb. It was going to go off at a certain elevation by Martha's Vineyard. And so they found out about that. And what they did is they made sure, I believe it was a Navy SEAL went in there, they blew it up at the right time. Of course, the Navy SEAL jumps out in a parachute, black box, they can find that. So the point is they knew the event was going to happen back then, and then they took the necessary precautions to put them into witness protection, fake his own death, and hence why I believe JFK Jr. is still alive. So if you follow that logic and all the gematria that comes up with the, a lot of numbers are relating to the past with the other supposed assassinations. So instead of it being Trump's going into witness protection, they altered a little bit. And so I think the deep state had their plan to do this, okay? But in order for it to work, they would have to miss. And at the same time, okay, so I do believe that part's real. They wanted to go ahead and execute him. And during this time, he had to fake that he actually got shot instead of, you know, obviously dying. Okay, they clipped his ear. But as far as the ballistics and all that detail, I got nothing to like say on that matter. But there's enough evidence that it could clearly go either way in this. I am not completely decided, but I would have to say just by the nature of all the stuff that I've researched.
Now, Matt, can I ask? Do you think it's possible that they intended to orchestrate a hoax? Because like everything that I can see from the kid on the roof that we've seen that they're saying is their prime suspect number one, right? This kid on the roof that apparently has no identity, no social life, no background, no nothing. Like this kid just pops up out of nowhere and decides he's going to go assassinate a former president, right?
Except for the BlackRock commercial.
Yeah, except for the BlackRock commercial, which coincidentally, I wish I would have taken a screenshot of it, but I swear they had Mark Violet's name in that the night before. That exact same thing. Like, this is Mark Violet, who was in a BlackRock commercial. Like, I mean, I wish I would have taken a screenshot of it, and then I would have had it the next day to be like, and now it's this other guy that has coincidentally 3 names that now has, you know. So, but if it hadn't been for him actually getting hit with bullets in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a hoax or not, whether he was supposed to do that part of it or not, if that kid would have just gotten up on the roof, fired 2 blanks, and one of the snipers takes him out 20 seconds later, hoax pulled off, everything's perfect. I think the wild card is the first 3 shots that were fired. He wasn't expecting it. Like, so is there an opportunity in your mind for it to have been supposed to have been this giant hoax with no scapegoat? This guy's a conservative, so there's not really anything to blame, but people are targeting Trump right after Biden says, let's put a bullseye on this guy. Like it just plays out too perfectly without him actually having to get shot. Mm-hmm. But then he does. And then the world's like, we don't know what to do with this. Like they canceled the Monday Today Show or whatever it is after this. Like they're scrambling for consistency in a story here. And the FBI didn't want to release ballistic details. They didn't want, like, it almost seemed to catch the media with their pants down. Like they almost didn't seem to know how to react to it. Mm-hmm. Like,
so yeah, the way I'd comment on that is Today's Show, like I'm fairly convinced, be it more than 50%, that they probably had something saying Trump died.
Yep.
They already probably had that in the pocket. They were, this is where I feel that, like, okay, yes, you have a nobody, the Mark Violets, go ahead and do that. The real sniper would have been somebody else, and they were planning on him dying. When you talk about the gunshots that were actually fired and then like the trajectory, okay, if that part's actually real, and there's a lot of, I do believe that there's a very high likelihood for that to be the case as well. You would have Mark Violets, just the Potsy. You'd have a professional sniper taking the shot. And I could firmly see that would be the way that it would go. I lean more towards a combination of a few different things. But yeah, today's show, it would have been canceled because they would have had it in the pocket and they would not have been able to say it. And I think that truth will come out if it is certainly if it is true. Certainly come out.
I do wish, similar to the Sandy Hook situation and a few others, the Boston bombing is another one where you see the media come out with things when they're not supposed to yet, a little early, that kind of stuff, announcing things. It would be awesome if we did have a smoking gun in this situation where we actually had a press release about, the obituary of Donald Trump, or like it slipped out or something. We're like, gotcha, but obviously we don't have that. I do want to point out, since we did talk about, of course, the shooter, we know him, the Patsy, whatever we want to call him, whatever he is, Thomas Matthew Cooks, the guy with the 3 names. But it did come up, this idea of Mark Violets. And I just wanted to cover this real quick because I'm under the impression that Mark Violets, who is a fictional character, he's not a real person, was somebody who was created for whatever reason. They ditched Mark Violets, but I feel like they were going to roll out this character who was Mark Violets. So let me just cover this really quickly. You guys all probably remember, it was this guy in the photo here that said it was Mark Violets, and he was arrested. He was an Antifa member. Well, if you look on the right, this is the real guy. His name is not Mark Violets. It's actually Marco Violi. He's an Italian sports writer and video blogger. He's really into soccer. He lives in Rome. And I guess he woke up in the middle of the night. People are buzzing him. He's like, what? And it makes me wonder if, like, in this misinformation that was brought out, if maybe Intel had something against this guy. And I don't know if they were pranking him or what, but they were throwing him under the bus. That being said, we did notice someone in a group brought this to our attention the night it happened. We were all discussing in our group, and this Mark Violets person, his name was never searched in his history, but on the morning of it was the 13th, there was about 7 searches for his name starting at like 5 a.m. Very, very fishy. And then boom, it just shoots off afterwards as soon as the misinformation is shared. So we're looking at that going, well, that's interesting. There were a few pieces of information leading up to it. We see in number 20 of Trump's Project 2025. Let's see if I can read. Well, actually, I don't have to read that little tiny thing. But on his website, it says, stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish the foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence, and lock up violent defenders, which is, it's like a spelling error, but it's kind of adds to this whole violent thing. And then, of course, we see in Snoop Dogg's music video where he's famously assassinating Orange Man. The name of the video is Lavender, which seems to paint this whole idea of violence. So I'm just putting that out because I sometimes wonder if, I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened behind the scenes, but if this fictional character, Mark Violets, whoever he was going to turn out to be, some MK kid they just dropped on a roof or whatever, maybe they ditched the name at the last minute or something like that. I don't really know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Quick thought.
Yeah, go ahead, Go ahead.
Trump's Project 2025. Are you sure it's not Agenda 47?
It might be. Yeah, I'd have to look at his page again.
Yeah, I've heard Project 2025. Not Trump's at all.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, then that's a misprint. But
Agenda 47.
It seems to me that Mark Violets would have been their fall guy had Trump actually died. He would have been the guy they buried. Like with the internet history search, like the 7, they wanted to find out who he was. For whatever reason, they wanted to find out if there was actually a character out there named Mark Violets. They went and snagged a couple of pictures, and I firmly believe that if that guy, or if Trump would have actually died, he would have been there. He would have been their patsy. He would have been their fall guy.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, based on the fact that was out like within an hour or two at the most, Mark Violets, and I think it's because, my opinion is because the ones that perpetrated this, which in my opinion this was a deep state operation. It was not a white hat run operation. I believe this was a deep state operation, and I can kind of get into some of the reasons why I think that. But I think that they noticed that violent was misspelled as violet on his website, and so like, let's see if we can tie this to the far right by having it match, Trump's website.
Well, do you think? I mean, a thought I had was perhaps maybe both sides are calling each other out. I mean, do you think that it wasn't? Do you think there's a possibility that on his website it wasn't a spelling error and he was actually calling out this Mark Violet character?
That you know what? That actually honestly makes more sense. It could be that White House had intel that the deep state was going to use a violet in an assassination plot, and so they put that out there to say, hey, we know about this. That's absolutely possible.
So the idea is, if I'm understanding you guys correct, at least a couple of you are on the same page that Mark Violet was supposed to assassinate the president. They had the information ready. The assassination didn't work. Of course, Matthew's under the position that it was all a hoax. He was never intended to be assassinated. But then they did a name swap. Is that what I'm getting from you guys? That we went with I can never remember Cooks. I know.
Well, I mean,
Chris.
assuming that we're all on the same page with the Mark Violet was supposed to do this, right? So he was the guy that they were supposed to have either on that rooftop, or he's the guy that from 440 yards across the pond or whatever was supposed to shoot Trump, and he was going to be the guy that took the fall. Assuming that is the official story they were going to go with, and let's just go ahead and say Trump's team for whatever reason, or who the deep state that's on Trump's side, the Anons, whoever, figured it out, right? They get a hold of his people and they say, hey, this is the guy that's going to, and of course the CIA they're not dummies. They know how to run the web. They know how to do metadata searches and things of that nature, right? So they go ahead and say, well, we got to drag somebody else out. We got to get another guy in a quick hurry that can go do this job. Like that is our next fall guy. Or maybe that kid or whoever that body is that's laying right there in your picture is the guy that Trump had hired. Maybe he's not dead in that picture. Maybe that's a crisis actor. I mean, because to me, that does not look like a deceased person. That looks like a person with a ton of makeup on that is fake blood. There's 4 different colors of blood in there, and I'm not going to do anything with the hand-looking thing because John can cover that because I don't know enough about it, honestly, to talk about it. But there's too many inconsistencies in that photo. If you look at his nose structure, which they conveniently decided to try to hide with a lot of blood, for lack of a better term, the blood dried within the mouth, the blood dried on the face isn't running in the correct direction. It's not. It's more consistent with a blunt force trauma victim, like somebody that just got the absolute snot beat out of them. Secondly, you don't die with your eyes closed. Your muscles don't close that way. Like that's not the way it works. You close with your eyes wide open, or you die with your eyes wide open. So that posture isn't consistent with a dead person, and the way he's slumped. How did he get onto his back? Like there's so many inconsistencies in that photo that I'm willing to say 90%. That photo is 100% staged. Like,
now you had speculated earlier. Now we know that he wasn't necessarily dropped in there because we now have seen TMZ was the one that showed the video footage of him kind of like a caterpillar kind of inching up on the roof or somebody resembling him. So we know that there was somebody there. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting. I would like to see more video footage of him if possible, because I was catching, and maybe I could scroll here and we could look at it, because
Frazzled drip. That was the thing I was referring to. John might want to say something.
Frazzled drip. Yes, we'll come back to that. Okay, here it is. So here you could see the shooter. I think that's him dead there. I think that's a shot of him dead up on the roof right there. Or maybe he was removed then. I don't know. I'm not seeing any blood. So I'm not quite sure what we're looking at. The circle is supposed to be where he was. You see the ladder over there. Now they're saying he came up through the air conditioning chute or whatever. He never used the ladder. But I'm just looking. I'm trying to find blood shots on the roof. And the reason I say that is because, as you were saying, we don't, at this point in time, I am uncertain when this blood photo appeared. You know what I'm getting at? Like, with the, what do you call it? The Frazzled drip or whatever. For those of you who know what that is, Anthony Weiner's laptop and all that, and Pizzagate back. I did go down that rabbit trail really quickly, John Q. I'm like, yeah, okay. I forgot about that, but it took me back to the whole, Hillary Clinton, Anthony Weiner, and all that. Good times, old times. Anyways, yeah, Matthew, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, my thoughts are there's so much out there that could be crisis actors, particularly, and then how many of them in different places. The whole line that was behind Trump was reserve seating. Like, they knew exactly who was going to be behind him, which is really convenient when you're trying to pull something off. The angle that I come from, where I believe the white hats were completely in charge, does not neglify that I believe the deep state had a plan. So everything they're saying, I completely believe in. But when it comes down to understanding my angle, I believe in the time travel theory, where there's multiple Trumps. Okay, and so then Trump has the information from a day ahead of time. They take that to his advantage. And when it comes down to the Mark Violets that you bring up, trolling, like, the white hats are trolling the deep state, and they are always, 5 steps ahead. They always know what's going on. So I think they have control because of that ability. And I know it's far-fetched and whatnot, but from limited research, that's what I believe. And that takes, I think it's a big important part of this, to know how it could actually work, where the white hats are in control. They know exactly the plan of the deep state. Not only do they try to give them little hints that they know, but they troll them throughout. So that's my take.
So I want to say to some of the commenters out there that are, making little jabs, YouTube Columbos and all this kind of stuff. Everyone's CSI now, stuff like that. From my end, I think I've been very respectful towards the idea of saying I'm not a ballistics expert. I'm not a blood expert. But there are things that, like, we have seen enough hoaxes where if you have, I do want to see an order of events. I've talked about the bullet grazing the ear, when the blood appears, that kind of stuff. But if there are photos, if you can find photos of Thomas Matthew Crooks and there is no blood, then that's an issue for me. Or if you find a rooftop with no blood, right, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for here. Now, I will point out, again, I am not a trauma expert. However, every single search that I can find on this, just looking up, I've been looking at this for years and years and years, is that doctors will tell you when they see people die regularly, way of trauma or even cancer or whatever, that when the even hospice care workers, when a person dies, 2 things happen. One is that their jaws open up. Now you see that here with him. The jaws, it loosens and it opens up. You lose control of it because your muscles are relaxing. You don't go into a rigor mortis for a little while. You first relax and then you tighten up. But the eyes, they open up and they roll back. Now, I'm not saying that it's like that every single time. However, the idea of the closed eyes when you die, that's more of a Hollywood thing, right? So that. Again, I'm not saying that this guy here, that I'm a professional, I'm looking at this and go, oh, he's clearly not dead. But it is an exception to the rule from, it seems like a lot of people are saying, professionals with trauma victims, that his eyes would be closed like that after getting shot. So just point that out.
You can look at right now what you've got in that photograph with the guy laying sideways, right? And then the face. The blood patterns aren't even consistent between the 2 photos. I mean, you can just look at it, and they're not the same.
I might be following you there. I mean, I kind of see it.
You can see where it's kind of tracing from above his ear down, and then he's got kind of the little thing on the side of his face, but his face is splayed upwards in that second photo, and it's almost tucked into his chest in that first photo.
Yeah, I do see
and
that.
His arm is flexed underneath of him. Whereas if he had died and relaxed, he would have slumped onto that elbow. He's leaning back away from it. Like it's not consistent with a relaxed posture.
Yeah, and I would love to know who took the more close-up photo. I mean, obviously the one, that's far out, that's people on the ground, people in the crowd take those photos. I would love to know who took that close-up photo, because the thing that keyed me in on that was that frazzle drip. If you look at and it's hard to see in this photo, but if you go out and find it, if you look at the blood pattern that's on the ground in front of his face, the frazzle drip symbol is clearly there. That is extremely interesting.
So is your opinion that the blood pattern is planted in order to form? I mean, take us through the frazzle drip. What is your thought on that?
So I'm not going to get into any.
Without getting YouTube censors here on certain things.
Yeah. I think what I would say about, if people have questions of what frazzle drip is, you'll need to go out and do your own research on that. You could just do some, just search frazzle drip on like Rumble or BitChute or one of those kind of platforms, and you'll find lots of good information on it.
Well, I'm speaking in total ignorance here when I ask this question. So is it like a calling card?
It's something that is done. Man, I don't even know if I want to get into this.
Okay. All right. That's
yeah. Let's just say that those who know cannot sleep, but that's what the Q posts describe it. But so I almost what I think this is, what I think that photo is that was taken, it's the close-up photo. That would have been taken after that would have been taken a little bit later after the fact. Because I think that this was not fully that the white hats were not in on the stage. I do think that they were taken by surprise on this a little bit. But I think they knew it was coming, and I can get into some reasons behind that. But I do think that the team that responded to that rooftop, that they were part of, I would say, the white hat operation. And I think that they made that pattern as a message to send a message to particular individuals.
That pattern right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else you guys want to add? Anything else about the shooter or the suspect in question?
I would say that it's, in my opinion, he was not supposed to be the actual shooter, meaning an operation like this, you always have a patsy, but the patsy is never the shooter. You're going to have a more highly trained expert shooter who's going to be tasked with taking out the actual target. The patsy is mainly there to sow chaos. So I do think that there would have been another shooter somewhere else. Was that shooter taken out before, and so only the patsy shot? That's possible. I don't know. I just don't. There's just so much we don't know yet.
That's an interesting thought. Fascinating speculation. Of course, just want to point out that somebody shared this in our group, and that it's funny. I found this funny. They asked a question on the internet. Thomas Cook, Trump shooter, father a therapist, and the internet spit back that not only was his father a therapist, it said his parents are both behavioral counselors licensed with the state of Pennsylvania. I love how the internet gave that information and the person wasn't even looking for that. So I found that kind of funny. So the guy does have MK Ultra written all over him. I will point this out. To me, this guy here looks like a total crisis actor. It's funny in these, drills or whatever, that these people just show up walking down the street and, oh, look, his old schoolmate just is walking down the street and going up, and even their high school was like something like 40 something miles away, and he just happens to be there. And the big point of this interview was how he was a loner. He was always a loner. And, right there, they're putting in lone gunman over and over again in the media. All right. So You guys want to talk about the sniper responses or what was going on with security?
Yeah, this is where so Trump's, I guess we really got to set the stage with Trump did not have his typical protective detail there. His normal protective detail, I believe, was being rested. What's interesting is that, you know, they were exhausted. They had been Trump had been having to go between court case and court case, and I think that was part of the deep state plan was to you know have his detail just, you know, to a point where if they wanted to give the green light for the op, you know, that would be the day that the Secret Service director would swap out his protective detail. Jill Biden just so happened to be in Pennsylvania at the same time at an event somewhere nearby. So she was getting, you know, maybe say the second best. And so Trump was getting the bottom of the barrel. And in fact, I think there was a lot of those agents in that picture weren't even Secret Service. They were DHS agents.
Security.
Yep. There's
and local police, which
if
you look at the at least three groups involved, you have Secret Service, you have DHS, you have local police, and arguably Trump's protective detail. Like, there's 4 different groups of people there that could have been compromised. Any one of them could have been compromised.
Yeah, and according to the Secret Service, the area of responsibility that was the area where the shooter was a, I don't know if it was a local or state police, but, you know, a police area of responsibility. It's really weird, and that that they made that sort of Pac-Man shape with the standard Secret Service area of responsibility. But if this was a Q staged thing, I think they would have used their guys. Not maybe, potentially. I mean, I can see the optics of having, you know, diversity hires, you know, being the ones that are there to protect, you know, a president when something like this goes down. But if I'm President Trump and I'm going to stage this event, first of all, I'm not using live ammo. I think the fact that he turned his head at the exact millisecond that he needed to turn his head for it to miss, and the fact that there was a slight breeze, 7 mile per hour, you know, crosswind that pushed that bullet 2 inches to the right, tells me it wasn't a white hat staged event, but more of an act of yaw.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, here's an angle that I haven't heard talked about yet, especially in our circles, and it just came to me as you're talking. The biggest thing that we're being told is that it was a Secret Service exclusion zone by the general media, right? Because they're trying to pin this on the Secret Service as being their mess up, right? They caused this. This is their big mess up. And one of the big things that Trump has been highlighting is the ineffectiveness of his Secret Service details and calling for the need for more of them. And the media is just blasting the Secret Service here. Like, this is in their exclusionary zone. But yet we have eyewitnesses on the ground in cell phones from camera view angles that are saying they saw the shooter and were telling Secret Service agents by that building. How is that possible if they're not covering it? How are they telling somebody right next to him? Because from all the things I've seen, the people that were standing next to him that saw him getting up on the roof, they weren't in the rally. They were spectators that were trying to view it from a distance, but didn't want to necessarily pay to get into the event. And they saw him climbing up onto the roof. So, and they're telling Secret Service agents, from everything I've seen, hey, there's a guy up there on the roof. Secret Service gets called. Guy says, yeah, ignore it.
Yeah,
So,
from what I understand is, and this is my understanding, is that the folks that, like, sort of the ones that near the building that was being reported to by the crowd, those were local police or state police or what have you. You could tell from the video they looked like police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that the counter sniper up on the roof, according to the story that we are being told and being fed, is that he was instructed by his higher ups not to shoot, and then he decided to shoot after shots were fired. Which, honestly, that, you know, the protocol is if there's a threat, you shoot before the threat actually engages, if you can identify a clear threat, and that was a clear threat.
Well, and that is coincidentally, that is police protocol. Like, because they don't want to shoot a kid that has a cap gun and it's just being silly and trying to get attention, because their police department's going to get lambasted for shooting a kid with a cap gun. That's just trying to get social media attention. Like, so police protocol is we'd have an escalation of force policy. And I mean, you're a Marine, you've been deployed, you know that escalation of force is a thing in a deployed combat zone.
Yep.
But if a guy points a gun at me, that's considered escalation of force.
Yeah.
If he points a gun at one of my guys, it's considered escalation of force. I have full right to engage that target if he's pointing a gun at me or my guys. Like, it's just standard protocol. Like, but a police department may have reacted very differently in saying, we don't have a confirmed that this gun is real. We don't know what this kid's doing. Maybe he's just trying to get attention. There's people around with cell phones. He's trying to be like, there's a whole other angle to that too.
Yeah.
So,
and the sniper on the roof, I don't know if it's Secret Service or not. I mean, it says police on his back. Like, do Secret Service put police on their back? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Doubtful.
I don't think so.
But can I talk real quick, Noel, about my theory that the bullets didn't actually come from that side at all?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So one thing that John and I and you, and I'm not sure Graham might have been in on it too, but we were talking about.
Can I just quickly throw something in here before you do? I want you to talk about that. I want to say to everyone out there, there's a lot of people like in the chat comment, like just saying like how ridiculous this kind of conversation is, how this is all fake. I'm wondering, I think I started out saying this, that generally I find that, like, okay, if this is a hoax, we should be able to come out and say, this is why it's a hoax. Now, for those of you listening, there have been several different points of views giving and saying, this element of it is a hoax. This element of it is a hoax. This, this is happening. This is a psyop. This is a counter thing. Some really fascinating theories going on here. And I know there's, it's always a silent majority out there, right, that enjoys, and it's usually the minority that makes comments. But I generally find that when people go out and they name call, that's basically tells me that you guys have no argument whatsoever. Like it's a 1 out of a 10 in an argument. Like people who are able to actually make a case for something, they do it. They come out and say, here's why I think it's a hoax. I can show you, let's look at this picture. Let's look at this diagram and this and that. Or I think this is legitimate and here's why. And then you have all the people showing up to name call. And it's like, okay, well, you guys actually can't make a case for this either way. So just want to point that out to everybody. And I hope you guys are paying attention here because Matthew disappeared. I wish he was still here. He had a very fascinating perspective. He's an Anon guy. And he's like, this is all a hoax. So I hope you guys can just understand there's different perspectives coming in here. And we're all respectfully having this conversation and enjoying it, I hope. We've been enjoying it the last few days talking. Anyways, Delvin Branch, go ahead. What is your position on the second shooter? Because I know you were talking to me about this. Hey, he's back. Matthew's back. I know you were talking to me about this, I think earlier today or yesterday. I can't remember when. And I wasn't really getting the points that you were bringing across.
Okay. So one of the things, and you might be able to see it on the picture of the ear, of Trump's ear when the gunshot wound goes in. Where it shows the actual picture of his ear on the side that people say is a hoax and he's not bleeding enough for it to be a realistic shot. One thing I want to show on there is the splatter. Like the splatter looks like it's coming from the back to the front. If you look at the picture of the bullet that's traveling, it looks like it's traveling from behind his head to the front. And I posted a little diagram that where they're saying that the victims were falling was on the left-hand side of the stage.
Okay.
Well, here's the problem with that. If they're on the left-hand side of the stage,
are we talking stage left or right?
Stage left.
Stage left. Okay.
Okay, so the victim is about halfway up middle of the left-hand stage, right? That got shot. The problem is if it's a pass-through wound, right? And I've already explained the ballistics of a 5.56, right? And it is not a round that's going to penetrate through something and keep going. And even if it had, it's not going to have enough projectile strength to reach him and cause a wound, right? So if there's 3 gunshot victims that are on the left-hand side of the stage from those first 3 rounds that we've all heard, and even Graham confirmed that you could hear the sound of the gunshot, you could hear the repercussion, and you could hear it make an impact. So if that is true, it had to have been at minimum the second shot that caused the wound on Trump's ear if it's coming from stage left, if the bullet's coming from stage left. Otherwise, you have 3 gunshot victims, and those 3 victims get hit by bullets before Trump ever does, which gives him enough time to react before anything happens. If they're coming from the right-hand side of the stage behind him and passes through his ear, embeds itself in a victim, second gunshot embeds itself in a victim, third shot embeds itself in a victim, they're all coming from that direction and going to stage left. The bullets are. And with ballistics confirming that those bullet trajectories came at 440 yards, there's no way that that person on 150 yards away made any of those shots, because they would have hit victims first before they hit Trump.
I had asked earlier, I'd asked you guys in the private group what you guys thought about this photo. Would you say, Devin Branch, that the bullet is coming from his, I guess, stage right, going stage left, or did it just pass through his ear and is going to the right here? What would you say?
In my opinion, that bullet is coming from stage left and going to stage right.
Okay. And the rest of you are of the opinion that,
okay,
okay,
so
it's
coming from stage right, going to stage left. I'm sorry.
Right. And the rest of you, so the rest of you are the opinion that stage left, stage right, and you're saying stage right to stage left, correct?
Right. But you don't have any victims stage right.
See, this is why I asked this question before we went live today. I was kind of curious what you guys' thoughts were on this.
Yeah, we don't have victims, but we do have that hydraulic hose that clearly it was hit from the left as you're viewing it. So, because of how the hydraulic fluid was squirting out towards the stage, right?
Okay.
So at least that did come from that direction.
And that would have deflected if it would have hit. So if something would have hit a hydraulic hose coming from stage left, which conceivably could have been a second shot that hit a hydraulic hose coming from stage right. If the first shot came from stage right to stage left, and if it would have hit a hydraulic hose, it would have deflected. It would not have hit his ear. But perhaps the second shot, which may have been a kill shot, hit the hydraulic hose and deflected into another victim. I suppose that's possible. But I also see your point that it could have traveled from stage left to stage right, hit that hydraulic hose. I see your point.
Matthew, you've been quiet through this. What are your thoughts about what we're talking about?
Well, I didn't get a chance to discuss that, and I really didn't have an opinion earlier on, but it just occurred to me, taking my kind of view of things, like, how hard is it nowadays to go ahead and take in a video, break it down, and then just draw a little line? Like, it's in theory, it's easy enough for somebody to just do this after the fact and then put it into the what seems to be the initial video. It's just a simple thought.
Yeah, so your opinion, just to be clear, is that there was no bullets fired, correct?
That it is, I guess to say is my opinion is that is possible that there is no bullets fired. You could do the audio, you could do everything, you can overlay it. However, the reactions of the people is a little bit, you'd have to say the majority of them are crisis actors if that was the case. So then you play the audio so that other people hear it, and then different things. It's possible. That's all I can say is that whole scenario is possible to be faked in its entirety.
So, but what I'm understanding from what you just said, though, Matt, is that specific picture that's on the screen right now, how hard is it to alter that after the fact and just draw a line in it? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I see your point.
It's just simple. It's nothing. It's not. I mean, I believe that it's probably legit, but at the same time, I can't deny that technology these days, there's a lot that can be faked, and just sheep over my eyes, wool over my eyes.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there on Matthew, and I appreciate this. That I want your honest opinion, and we're all friends here, all 5 of us. We're all in the tech community. We come together most Sabbaths together, and so I just want your honest opinion. I appreciate it. That's one of the reasons I asked you on.
I think that was probably the people's opinion, because I didn't even think about that earlier, and I'm like, you know what? Why not? It's possible. So,
I mean, for me, the way I'm looking at this is, for me, the ultimate question comes down to, was an actual bullet, a series of rounds, whether it was 5, 7, 8, whatever, was there an actual bullet that went past Donald Trump's head? For me, that is the ultimate question that I've been trying to get to the bottom of, right? And, we can go through, okay, he opened up a packet, did this, the whole WWE wrestling thing and all that kind of stuff. I went through the whole 9/11 thing and the holographic planes, and there were missiles and all this kind of stuff. And I agree. I mean, I could look at this photo and I could go, that is inserted later. I would love, maybe it's just because I'm older and I've seen so much stuff. What I would love is for somebody to be able to come out and say, I can prove that's a composite image, right? Like, we can do that with the
NASA photos, yeah.
Moon.
Yeah, we can do that with NASA photos. We could show these are composite images. We can do that with the Zapruder film. We could show that is a composite image of multiple frames, maybe multiple takes. And that's one of the things I want to know. Was this all in live time? Like, was the body dropped on the roof in live time? This is one of the things I was getting at earlier. I think a lot of people listening maybe missed out on this. They weren't following my train of thought. When did the blood appear? Was the blood immediate when he was shot? These kind of things. These are the questions I have. You don't have to be a CSI guy to think about this stuff. You're just looking for an order of events and seeing how it plays out. So yeah, for me, that's the ultimate.
Yeah, when did the smearing of the blood happen by his face? How did that get there? Like, who did it? Like, you don't get that blood pattern from just bleeding onto a roof. Like, somebody had to have smeared it to get that Fraggle whatever print into it.
Frazzled drip.
Yeah. Frazzled drip. There you go. You'd have to have smeared it in some capacity. So some sort of, were they trying to clean it up to get that effect? Like somebody, if that photo is real, somebody closed his eyes, like that had to have happened. So then that's not a fresh picture. So then at that point, how much of it's doctored? Like, you don't have any idea, because if they closed his eyes in the photo, they touched the body. What else have they touched? Like, so you know what I mean? Because that's what you're saying from like timeline wise. Somebody didn't just walk on that roof and snap that picture.
Yeah.
And if they did, it's 100% not a real picture. So, I mean, that's where you're at with that angle. But, and this is where I get into, like, not to be weird or anything, but like mind of a killer type stuff, where it's like, if I'm trying to kill somebody, like if I'm a CIA assassin, right, and I'm planning on killing somebody, I'm not going to a rooftop that I know I'm not getting off of, unless the point is for me to die. Like, if I'm not walking off of that roof, it's because I know I'm not walking off that roof. I'm going to get the job done, and it doesn't matter if my life hangs in the balance or not. Like, I'm going to get my job done because that's what I'm getting paid to do. And whatever, if somebody's got blackmail on me, they're paying my family to make sure that I do this job, or they've got some blackmail on me where they're going to release a bunch of stuff, whether I do this thing or not, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to pick the roof across the street where I can get into a getaway car and get out of there as fast as possible. Because if you are a sniper, you can break down your weapon, you can be out of that place in 15 seconds and in a car and gone. There's no reason why you need to be anywhere where anyone can see you. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, that part of it to me does not make any sense. 500 yards is far more comfortable for me to take a shot than 150.
Yeah.
If I'm a sniper.
Yeah, and that's what you kind of have to say, that there would have had to have been two shooters, and that's always the case with these type of ops. You have the patsy. The patsy is typically an MK Ultra victim who is mind controlled, and they're put front and center, and they're there just to sow chaos to make it easier for the actual shooter to do his job and then get away.
And I mean, the other part of it that drives me crazy is the fact you're like, this stuff is outside the Secret Service perimeter, blah, 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 right? You could take anybody that's been in I don't care if you've just been through Army active duty basic training and then LSAT right afterwards, or Marine Corps basic training and then your rifleman's training. You're going to go to that site. Either one of us, you could take either one of us with no experience whatsoever. You take us to that site and you say, okay, where's our prime areas that we got to watch out for? The first two things you're going to say is that building right there and that water tower. It's inconceivable to me to think that somebody that says those are overlooked.
Yeah, even Fortnite.
It's ludicrous. Even like you said, video game players.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's going to overlook that spot. It's the first spot you're going to look at. It's the first thing that you would secure. Because you want the height advantage. You want the high ground. I mean, think Star Wars, for crying out loud. Like, you want the high ground. So
let me talk about the shooter real quick. And let me just pull him up again real quick. Crooks. I keep forgetting his names. Thomas something Crooks. Well, I'll have it memorized here real soon. Hold on. I'm almost there. There he is. All right, Thomas Matthew Crooks. So I should remember that because we got a Matthew here. So
TMC.
What do you? Okay, let's say. So we're throwing around words, Patsy, MK Ultra, that kind of stuff, and we could all, I guess, discuss whether we think he is alive or dead in this photo, and I hope everybody out there appreciates that we're kind of looking at different aspects of different hoax activity here. But let's assume he's really dead. Let's say he really they this is a kill shot. There he is, dead. What do you think's going on there? I mean, Matthew, what's your thought on that? Do you think he's really dead?
No. Okay. JFK versus JFK Jr. JFK Jr. is still alive. JFK may have died more recently. And that would have been, I think it was like 2 years, I think is the rumor that he passed away. In the circles.
I appreciate you saying that, because you know that I have the JFK assassination is a hoax paper, right? Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't believe he died then. That's I can clearly say that.
Would you say he was I mean, how do you? I know we're going off a little topic now, but how would you know that he died, say, 2 years ago? What gives you that information?
It's
versus 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Like
I would say more rumors, but there's been pictures of supposed JFK along with Trump, and he would be in the background. Well, based on that, there would be new intel that would say that they had passed away, because it happens. I mean, you go in witness protection and you have a long life, and sometimes it's the end. It's not anybody's plan. It's just you die before any revelation comes out.
Are you referring to the guy in the, like, it was like a veteran in a wheelchair or something like that? Are you referring to that guy?
That sounds familiar. It's been too long for me to define exactly. Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I broke up your train of thought because I got so excited. You were talking about JFK being the assassination in November '63 being a hoax, and that's a big deal for me. So I'm sorry, I broke you off. What are your thoughts? Okay, this person is not dead. What's going on?
Witness protection, clearly. So this Zapruder film is a little bit, and your paper is a little bit foggy within my memory. It's too far back. I don't really study too much into that detail because it's not my time and whatnot. But the implications is that he was still planning on taking down the CIA, so the fruits of his labor and whatnot. I just don't think he lived that long.
No, I get it with JFK. I meant Thomas Matthew Crooks. What do you think is going on with this?
Thank you. Okay. Hold on that for a little bit. Let me chew on it. Someone else can
Okay.
give their take.
Well, we have about 30 minutes left, and I don't know what you guys, if there's something else you want to move to. I mean, we could talk about the people in the crowd. Were there crisis actors there? Were they all legitimate? I mean, what's your guys' take on that?
I got a opinion. We were talking about the bullet. Were there bullets used? And I do, at this point, believe they did use real bullets. And I think we likely witnessed a miracle. The protective hand of Yah catching that bullet or keeping it away from its intended target. You know, something else that's interesting to factor into that, and I know Matthew's familiar with this, I think John Q is as well, is the whole Trump time travel theory, which would explain a lot of the Q stuff. A lot of the future proves past. And, you know, you can imagine him being in that position, practicing, if you will, or knowing which way to turn his head, or maybe even a combination thereof, of the protection of the Most High and the time travel thing, which if you look into the whole Tesla time travel technology, it's pretty interesting. I'm not well versed enough to elaborate on it, but it's an interesting angle to look at.
Now,
Well,
okay,
sure.
let's talk about time travel real quick, because and we don't have to spend too much time on this, but of course you guys know that that's something that I've kind of tapped into, looked into, and one of the theories that I've come up with, and it's not what I've come up with, it's what other people are working with as well, is that, like, say, the Back to the Future movies are literally time travel movies. And what I mean by that is that you look at like all the 9/11 predictive programming, and it started back in the 70s. Some of the earliest I saw was like 76, maybe going back to 74, around then, where you start seeing all this 9/11 imagery start popping up at the Twin Towers. And the thing about the predictive programming of 9/11 is that it is so precise, like very little to no room for any kind of failure. I mean, and it just goes down without a hitch. And it's made me wonder if a lot of the predictive programming we actually see is a type of foreknowledge that the elite do have. Now,
do you think that has to do with Looking Glass?
It could be Looking Glass or something similar. Just so everybody is out there aware of my position, is I do not believe that time travel is physically possible. I do not believe a person can time travel. But I have asked the question, what if they are able to send information, some sort of electronic information to the different points in this short season we're in, maybe as far back as the 1970s. Maybe that's how CERN, accelerated their technology through being able to pass it back, so on and so forth. Okay, that's a whole different discussion. Now, in the instance where I'm against the time travel theory here with the Trump assassination plot, is because I was talking to John Q about this. I'm like, all right, John Q, give me a rifle, stand 150 yards out, and I'm going to pop off several rounds, and just at the precise moment, just turn your head. It's all going to go down without a hitch, right? And this is where I keep going back to. People will mock, people will say, just think it's stupid to even look into this possibility. But the question that I keep going back to, was there actual rounds used, right? And can you tell a difference between a blank and an actual round? And can you show evidence that there was actual rounds used? Because if so, that changes this entire thing. Because nobody in their right mind, I don't care if it's Trump, Obama, Hillary Clinton, any Anthony Weiner or anybody, is going to go up there and go, oh yeah, I'm just going to turn my head and just half an inch or whatever it is from my head. You're going to just shoot it and just miss my brain from blowing out all over the stage. It's just too much clockwork precision.
I agree. That's why I said maybe a combination of both. I think there was something miraculous there, the protective hand of Yah over him, because I do see him as the Q plan is something that I believe is a godly plan. And so,
I'm but since you mentioned that, who Doug, you're going to mention? Let me just say this really quickly. Since Graham said this, and this is, I've noticed the viewers out there, this is the hardest thing to wrap their. This is why, for most of probably the viewers in my camp or those listening to this video right now are unable to wrap their heads around the possibility that there were actual bullets that were fired at Trump. That is what you just said, the divine, you could say a guardian angel, you could say Yah, whatever, stop something from happening. And that's an impossible thought for a lot of people, because they're like, why would he stop this guy from being assassinated? The question I want to pose to everyone out there, and this is a serious question, is does the listener, I'm not saying, well, I guess I'm speaking to you guys too here across the board, but does the listener believe that that Yah has abandoned us on this earth, that Satan is running everything, and that you might say Yah has an investment in your life personally, but does he have an involvement on the world stage? Is Yah, is he and his agents out there on the world stage doing their works as well? Or is he completely abandoned us just a Satan psyop all the time? It's just all Satan all the time, deceiving or lying? Or can he actually come in and say, you know what, I'm going to do this and this and this and this? I think that's a good question. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time answering that. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts?
I think he's involved. He is active in the world today. And, us being in the short season, the little season, I keep looking at the separation of wheat and tares, and I think we're maybe getting toward the end of the short season, and that's the thing that happens toward the end, is the evil is removed, and I think that's why I think the Q plan is part of Yah's plan. There, I said it.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I'm not there yet. Just so everyone listen, I'm not there yet. I find this entire conversation really fascinating, and I'm willing to listen to the whole Anon. And it seems like, as we got Matthew over here, that it's very split. Some of the Anon views, and I really appreciate that, Matthew. I really do. John, was there anything else you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, absolutely. I concur with Graham. So the first shot was the shots were fired at 6:11 p.m. Ephesians 6:11, put on the full armor of God. Q drops have that in multiple posts. I think it's about 14 posts as they put on the full armor of God. That's one little example of things that as I'm doing this research and as I'm writing my articles, I'm finding connections over and over and over and over again. I'm able to cross-reference Q drops to events to scripture using the date timestamp or whatever of the Q drop, matching up with chapter verse of the scripture, or the chapter verse of the scripture matches up with something. It's overwhelming. Like, at some point, I have to say, how many coincidences before mathematically impossible, right? At some point, I have to say, can man do this? And if I say, no, man cannot do this, then I have to say, then Yah is behind this.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what's been really, what I've changed going through the Torah portions for me, and teaching those has completely changed a lot of my views on a lot of things. But also recently, going through the ceremony by the numbers, and I wrote a series of articles using, showing the gematria and how precise numbers are. And as I just down to the actual days where you could just calculate. Let me just show here in the paper. I start out showing some of this connections coming up. We see, we see a lot of 33s, 3333, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days of this and that event, 3,030 days. I mean, just up to this event, like, it is so timed down to the precision. And for a while, I'm looking at this going, we all have to live our lives. I'm trying to figure out how the elite are sitting around just coming up with all these coded messages all the time with each other, and I know that they do, but this stuff is so precise. I'm looking at this and going, what if this is actually, you can look at fallen angels. What if fallen angels are communicating to each other in mathematical precision in how they do things? But what if this is a language that comes from Yah as well? What if both sides are speaking this? And I mean, all of us, listening, I assume we could go back in our lives and we could look at these patterns in our lives and go, wow, look at how these things play out, right? And so we are looking into these brilliant supernatural minds behind the scenes on both sides as they're at war with each other. And we're seeing these like operations, spiritual operations from our spiritual controllers, as well as Yah on his side and his angels, as it's being materialized in the human realm. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I mean, that has been my conclusion looking at the brilliance of Gematria, and how I just do not think that this stuff can be that well engineered 24/7 by people, by the media.
If I may, two things. First one being, if we're going to say that there is a possibility that is a miracle and that it was intervention from Yah's side, right? Mm-hmm. There also has to be the equal representation in saying that there could be the potential that the enemy intervene and wants him alive for his purposes also. Like, if you're gonna say one thing is a possibility, you have to say the other is a possibility. Now, with the scripture matching up and everything else, there's definitely more leaning towards Yah's side. But if you're gonna say one has the potential to be true, you have to say the other has the potential to be true, and then answer the question why. Just to play the advocate in the situation. But secondarily, one thing that's been resonating in my mind is, do you guys remember like when there was a whole bunch of stuff about Project Looking Glass, right? And how they were looking into seeing the future, and there's these events basically where things bottleneck. They can't see past them. And
singularity events, yeah.
Singularity events, right? So there's a singularity event, and they said that there's somewhere between 2020 and 2024 that they can't see past. It's a bottleneck somewhere in there. Everything starts to delve into being where they can't see past it. So what if Trump is the thing they can't see past? Like, what if he's the anomaly in the situation and they're trying to figure out how to take him out of the equation so they can see what's going to happen and manipulate it again, and they just can't? Like, that's what I keep coming back to. And this is like, why the hostility? He's not outside of the club. I mean, he's an outsider for sure, but he has all the same circles as all the rest of these guys do. He plays the same games. He's trained by the same people. He's in the real estate markets. He's in the markets. He's in all these things. But he's like they all of a sudden he gets elected as president and they start dogpiling on him. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So is he the thing that's causing the anomaly that they can't see past? And that's why they're so aggressively trying to. Can you see what I'm getting after there?
Yeah. So give everyone listening kind of a perspective on this. I assume that most of my listeners are flat earthists. Maybe not everybody listening to this, but so we have these protective barriers within our geography. We have a firmament, a solid firmament. We can't get past that. Nobody can get past that. They can shoot all the rockets they want at it. Can't get past that. Then we talk about the Arctic ring, right? We have the path of the sun and the moon. Can't go past that into the darkness. We don't know how far out it goes, but you have this ice wall. You can't get past it. And so it's the same idea with time. And a lot of even the time travel theories coming out, John Presser was I gave a presentation on him a couple weeks ago. He talked about the mirrors, the singularity and all that. But who was I think about the time travel? It doesn't matter. But the idea is that in a lot of time travel theories that there are also these protective boundaries that you can't just go manipulate the past beyond, say, 30 or 40 years or something like that. And that Yah puts up these gates and these walls like, okay, you will not pass this point. And so all through history, we have these singularity events. Imagine you have these scrying mirrors, which I do believe they exist. And I brought up Prester John in his letter. He talked about having one of those. And so you have like the event when Rome falls. You have these events throughout history that these things have to happen, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. They can try to manipulate time and the events in their benefit up to a certain point. And so I think what you were getting at, Dove and Branch, is that we're coming up on another event. It seems like, all like everything is kind of coming to a head, right? I think everyone can agree on that. All these events coming together to a head. And so it appears that we're at a point where they can try to manipulate now, but they don't really know the outcome. And as far as I'm concerned, that makes a lot of sense. When we see the media out there just lying, lying, and just more and more, it never seems to have the outcome that they want.
Yeah, and part of if you remember from from Looking Glass, part of that was that at some point, no matter, as you would put in different choices into the system, into the program, it would feed you back, if I make this choice, then this will happen. If I make this choice, then that will happen. At some point, no matter what choice they put in, it always fed them back the same result, right? It nothing they could do could change. And so I think that that's part of this. I think that probably has to do with some sort of timelines merging or what have you. That kind of helps explain the Mandela effect. Now we're getting into all kinds of fun stuff, but I do think that what they're seeing that they could not change, that had them so freaked out and panicked, is the end of time, essentially, where they're all thrown into the lake of fire.
We're gonna, there's so many songs on that too. Like, we're gonna dance into the fire and all that kind of stuff. We're coming up on the closure of this, and so I want to just wrap this up. Get your final thoughts. Let's give it another 10 minutes. I guess we're kind of talking, but now about the implications of all this. But is there any other elements of this event on Saturday and the roundabouts that you guys want to discuss? Anyone in the crowd? Anything at all?
There's a lot of info. Maybe we can do another show on this. There's a lot of stuff. There's so much stuff we could dive into. I think it's probably. I think it'd be good to wrap up with like implications.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. So what is the implications of all this? I mean, and Matthew, I want to get your perspective. I want each of you, let's just go down, each of you, and take a couple minutes, what you think the implications are of all this, starting with you, John Q. What does this all mean?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really fascinating to me is that Trump walked out on the stage at exactly 6:03, and I was watching that because the Q drops teach us that timing matters, right? And Trump will do a lot of things for timing. He'll time things to send out some specific comms, and then of course we go and try to decode what he's trying to tell us. 6:03. If you remove the zero, that's 63. That's when JFK was assassinated. Was 1963. So instantly, I was thinking he's sending a message about JFK. Well, on Sunday, 7/14, America was reflecting on what happened the day prior. And it was a JFK moment, but without we all lived through the trauma of a JFK moment without what I think the deep state actually wanted to have happening. And in a sense, it was cathartic I believe, for the American psyche. We have been traumatized by the JFK assassination ever since then. Even subsequent generations have been traumatized, because when you're traumatized, you carry that trauma in your DNA. And so, like, I can get choked up, even though I wasn't alive then. I can get choked up because that trauma is there in me as an American, because my parents went through that trauma. And so I think we had on 7/14, America was reflecting on what happened. And you see it all over social media. People are realizing, I'm not talking about the crazy, lefties that are putting out stuff like, why did he miss, stuff like that. I'm talking about the average American. And they're like, I've been wishing they would, Trump would be removed or whatever. But man, I don't really wish that. Essentially, America stared into the abyss that day. And for some, the abyss stared back. So, and we have people that were facing, what they kind of were wishing they would happen. They were putting that out carelessly on social media, and they're realizing now, wow, I don't really want that. So there's been a unifying that's happening. There's a cathartic healing that's happening. In order to heal from trauma, you got to face that trauma. And so the American psyche is facing that trauma right now. And what's interesting is, I talked about how 6:11 p.m. was the timestamp, and you can point that to Ephesians 11. Put on the full armor of God. Well, in 7:14, America was reflecting, and they were finding healing. I think from the JFK trauma. Well, guess what? If you look at 2 Chronicles 7:14, what does it say? It says, "If my people who are called by my name and will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land." This is an act of Yah. The fact that Trump is still alive says that Yah still has plans for him. The fact that we are right now not in a civil war because they took Trump out, which is what they want to do, was put us into a civil war. The fact that we are not in that civil war right now says Yah is not done with America.
Amen.
Yeah, I'll have some thoughts I want to add to that, John, when we finish up. At Dove and Branch, what are the implications for you? What is your conclusion here?
Well, my thought is exactly what John finished up with, is where I was going to start with, coincidentally. So I don't think there's any coincidence in that, because, don't believe in coincidences. But I think that the implications would have been that we would be in a massive upheaval right now if the bullet had found its mark. Yeah. The right-wing party would have stormed the gates. You thought January 6th was something weird. It would have been real weird, real fast, if the bullet would have found its mark. And I don't really want to go too far down that hole just for YouTube reasons and everything, but I mean, it would have been a very different country the very next day when you woke up. We all know the people with the guns are on what sides they're on. It's not hard to figure out from that point. But the part of it that struck me as the biggest implication is what he said. It was very traumatic. Anybody that's been through any type of a situation, that's lived through something like that, it's traumatic. It was traumatic to watch it, if I'm being completely honest. I was pretty choked up the whole time. It's easy for somebody that hasn't lived through that kind of trauma to dismiss it and say it's a hoax, which, again, back to your point, Noel, the people that scream the loudest are generally the people that don't have experience to add to the conversation. It's very hard to fake some of those things. It's very hard to fake them. It's very hard to fake reactions. It's very hard to fake those sounds and have them come off as realistic. It's very hard to fake reaction times. It's very hard to fake the jerks, the motions. So regardless of whether or not it was a hoax or whether it was supposed to be a hoax, my belief is that it was real bullets. Whether or not they were supposed to find their mark, they didn't. Into that. And I think that we're not in a civil war today because of that. So what implications it has on the election, I have a hard time saying, because I don't really follow politics, if I'm being completely honest. I have a king and I don't need another one. So I think it's interesting. I think it's fun to follow, but I already have a government. I already have a kingdom that I follow. So I get my rules and marching orders from him. I don't need them from somebody else. But I do think it's interesting to follow for the sake of what's going on in the world. And God does build up kings and he tears them down. So if God wanted this king torn down, he would have done it. So that's just where I sit on it.
That was both of you, John and Dove and Branch, those were incredible conclusions, answers. I will add, I will say to that when I do see people coming and just screaming out, if you don't think this is a hoax, you're stupid, you're an idiot, they kind of thing. I'm like, okay, I don't know who you are, first of all. But I don't have any respect for those kind of individuals, because they're not, as somebody, and I think everybody here, I would say we're all intellectual people. We have all put thought into this. I will respect anybody who can come up either way, say this is legitimate or a hoax. I will respect your opinion if you can actually put real, genuine thought into this. And so when somebody comes along and they're just shouting names, I'm like, you don't have anything. You have nothing. And that's why you're based on anger, on fear. There's only two prime emotions, love or fear. I say this all the time. And people who are fearful, they're fearful of being wrong. They're fearful of losing control. They come out and do this kind of stuff because they've got nothing else. Anyways, great answers from both of you. Graham, what's the takeaway here?
Well, so I was just minding my own business, enjoying relaxing on the Sabbath, hanging out in the shallow end of the swimming pool, watching the Trump rally. I've seen a lot of them live. I've seen them all, but I've seen a lot of them live, one in person. Glad it wasn't this one. Kind of wish I was there, but not really.
No, honestly, I don't, sorry to interrupt you. I for everyone, I'm not interested in politics at all. I wish I was, because I want to know, right? I wish I was there and I could just be like, okay, just look around and see my bearings and see what's going on. It's one of those things I wish I could be off camera and be there. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, and I've been off and on, into politics and not into politics. This to me is an exception because I do see Yah's hand in it. And I was going to say it's a moment that I'll never forget, just like 9/11, all those things, you never forget where you were the moment that it happened. And it was interesting watching it live too. So it's etched in the memory. I think that I think that what happened, that failed assassination, just ensured Trump's victory. Now, not to say they can't steal it, but I think a vast majority of the people are behind him this time, and I think that we may be going through some more difficult things, but I think there's better days coming. I feel like the best is yet to come.
All right. And to your point, Graham, I think that the fact that they tried to take him out that's basically them admitting they don't think they can steal it.
Yeah.
You only play the cards you need to play.
That was a desperate move. You're right.
Matthew, what's your takeaway from all this?
I would have to agree that the best is yet to come. That's the implications with what I believe. There's a few things that we've touched on that I want to go a little bit deeper in, but time is eluding me. One, I want to mention John Titor. Titor is the guy you were talking about.
Yes. I said press your John. I knew there was a John in there. Yes.
Yeah. The time travel. Concerning him, if you look up the videos and all the commentary and everything that he believes, he'd be the exact kind of person they want to send back. There's a lot to look into. But nonetheless, I just want to say that his personality and everything would be the reason why they'd send him back for the mission, for the IBM little computer piece, etc. Why it matters. When you talk about time travel and you talk about the looking glass, what happens that the looking glass can't see past? They can't see past a person who comes back, only use their time travel a day ahead of time. You don't think necessarily he had to do that his whole life. What if it was only that period of time where he had to be activated? Okay, so then you have a specific time travel where everything they do a day ahead of time, he's always 5 steps ahead, and they can't determine what's happening, and he always gets out of it, which further propels what I believe is possible. If he is in control and whose hand is in this, if those implications, then the whole thing is a hoax and that kind of things. Now, as far as one more thing is when Graham spoke of a devil's advocate and what kind of view they could have, when we look at the we saw the wound, and then a wound in his head, and then he died and he came back from it. Well, he got shot in the ear. So then when it comes down to the devil creating this implication, I believe during the Great Deception, the devil doesn't have to, Hasatan doesn't have to do what the Bible says as like he's restrained by it. I think he has to do that because the Bible's out there. He can't taint all of it, besides Mandela effect and all those rabbit trails that I'll try not to go into. he does it because he's creating a theology around a false doctrine. And so then he has to, in order to convince people the millennial reign hasn't happened, fulfill all these things in some way, not the real way. And so then, hence, why would the devil allow it to happen? People would think that he's the Antichrist. And so good on that angle. So I just want to say all that to wrap up. I think this is completely legit. The Patriots are in control, and then everything's going to be good. And the implications of that is just the best is yet to come, and you can dream all you want because good things are coming.
All right. Well, I'm going to give my thoughts on this, and I've said this a few times before, but when I quote unquote woke up and I came into the True of the Realm, and of course I haven't voted since last time I voted was probably 2012. It's been a long time, and I came into it, during the whole Sandy Hook era, Boston bombing, and we're going into Jade Helm, and it was the Obama administration. We're all going into these FEMA camps. It was just very dark, and we were just trying to tell everybody you're going to be round up and all this kind of stuff, and when I think I could probably say this without getting flagged, when COVID hit in really like January 2020, I was like, this is it. It's over. It's all over now. The analogy I used time again was that somebody had pulled a pin on a grenade and you can't put the pin back in. You can't untoast the toast, right? It's over. They're just waiting for society now just to blow. And we maybe next time we do this, John, we'll talk more about the long-term plan that they had with COVID and that kind of stuff, and how it got kind of thrown off. We don't have time for it. But something I started noticing, because I go into COVID late 2019, early 2020, like in the trenches. I'm manning the gun. I'm like, this is it. This is what I've trained for. I'm going to go wake people up. And something started happening about 2 years down the line is all these people started waking up, just waking up. This whole new class of people were coming in, and they spoke very differently than my class. They were very optimistic for the future. They saw this light at the end of the tunnel. And I've had to unlearn a lot that I've learned. And a lot of the people in the older, truther thought process, they refuse to unlearn what they've learned and go like, maybe we were wrong about some things. And maybe there's actually hope coming. Maybe, just maybe, the more they lie to us, the more they hoax us, the more people are waking up, and they can't stop that. So on a closing note, let me just say one thing that I have learned about the human dynamic, what it is to be human, that always, I shouldn't say always, I shouldn't generalize, but in my experience, nearly always gets left out of these conversations when we're talking about hoaxes. And something called pride. Who is the king of pride? Satan. Satan wants to ascend to the heights. And what does a proud person do? They think they're going to win. All right. They've got ego. They're narcissists. They think they're going to win. They're not going to lose. They think they have a hope. And what does pride do? It blinds people. There's a saying, twice the height, double the fall. So let's give a scenario here that our elite, it's always painted like, oh, they're just these cool, calm, they're actors, they're laughing their ass off, and they're just making all this up. And, they're going according to the script that comes in that week, some guy in the back room on the typewriter, and, the Trump assassination is this week, guys, and they're all reading it and getting ready to do their parts. The thing about pride is that it really darkens people's eyes, and it's terrible to behold. And are we at a point in history where they are so blinded by their pride, they can't see their hand in front of their face, they can't see the writing on the wall, and Yah is literally using this against them? And we are seeing in real time where he is defeating the enemy, and they are falling on their face. And the more they try to hoax us, the more they try to lie to us, it's actually working in reverse. And of course, the thing is with a sociopathic person or a serial liar or whatever, pathological liar, is they can't stop lying. They can't stop doing it. So that's my thought on this. And this is why I am hopeful for the future. And the more I see them doing this stuff to us, the more I see people waking up, and I see that as a good thing. I see that the separation of the wheat and the tares. I'm very excited by the days we live in. I love to be able to do this, and I love that you guys all came on. And I hope we can do this again. We'll have to try to do this again maybe next month in August, John. And of course, this is a big year, right? It's an election year. And I will say one more thing, that whatever side of the fence my listeners fall on, whether you are, this is purely a hoax, or that there was a legitimate, a real bullet that was fired on that day, and maybe it was intended to take him out. I like, who said, I think Delvin Branch, said, like, they wanted a civil war. They wanted to take him out, and this might literally be in their pride. You know, they thought they could not fail, and I was like, you know what? I got other plans here. I'm going to start waking people up. I had a point.
What they intended for evil, Yahweh meant it for good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to, my hope is that whatever side of the fence, anyone listening, I hope this was informative for everybody, get a little bit more insight from different perspectives, is that this, on the world stage, the discussion we were having tonight was one of the biggest moments in the little season in modern history that will probably happen in our lifetime. I mean, look back at the last 50 years. What other event, other than you have 9/11, you've got a few of them. What other event was this big and a decisive moment for the future of the world stage? So on that, we'll do this again, guys. I really enjoyed this. Hope you guys did too. And we'll maybe the next month or so. Shalom, everybody. Good night.
Shalom, brothers.
Shalom. Shalom.
Absolutely.